again. Hi, everybody. So I am going to take you through a number of concepts, a number of the features of Google Analytics that you can use to gain a greater understanding of your audience and a greater understanding of how well your marketing is performing. What I will ask is if you've got any specific questions about analytics that you have at the top of the meeting, please add them to the chat box and I will try and answer those as I go through the training. And if there's anything I haven't answered, I'm going to set aside 15 minutes at the end so we can discuss things in general. But I've compiled some training materials based on some, there were 3 people that submitted some information. I see Christina did. There was a couple of other people, I can't see them on the screen, but there's 3 brands that I've been able to use as an example throughout, so I'll be able to do some live demonstrations with their data. I hope that's okay. Please let me know if you're not happy to do that, anyone who did submit the data. But otherwise, I've used screenshots. That should all be okay. I think I'll just get stuck in. I'll just share my screen. So part of this, just double checking people can see Google Analytics. If you thumbs up, nod, that all looks good, thank you. And also I just prepared a slide deck, a presentation to take you through each of the concepts, but I will be flicking between this and Google Analytics, so I'm gonna, hopefully that will work, to sort of explain the concept within here, and then I will dip out and then I can show you interactively how it all works. So I'll just tell you a bit about me. I really won't spend that much time on that, but just to prove to you that I have the credentials to deliver this training. I've been in digital marketing for 12 years now. Through every single role that I've been in, I've had to use Google Analytics inside and out. So I've been using it quite a long time. My main specialism is in search engine optimization, and there's a few training sessions that I'm scheduled to do later in August and September about SEO in particular. But this session is more about how we can use the data within Google Analytics to give you an idea of how your digital marketing is performing overall. Sorry. So to start with, just to take you through the main structure of Google Analytics, the main areas that it focuses on. It focuses around 3 pillars of, it has the ABC acronym of acquisition, behavior, and conversion. Then it also has elements of the platform for real-time and audience. But if you remember throughout the platform, it goes ABC. It clearly groups the kind of data that you're analyzing into those 3 areas. But we'll start with audience. So the main focus of this area of analytics is to tell you about the people, the individual users that are interacting with your content, where they come from, who they are, what demographics they fall into, what interests they have, the kind of technology they're using to access your website, and whether that technology is set up to receive your website in the correct way. Are they using desktop or mobile? Are they a new visitor? Are they a returning visitor? You can find out an awful lot about the people that are coming into your website through this part of the platform. And I've just pulled out a few. I've not gone into detail of every single thing that the platform does, but I've pulled out the main ones that would be of interest to somebody coming to this new, or somebody who's not sure, you know, they've only just scratched the surface of what Google Analytics can do. So with audience, I think the most exciting things within this section are definitely the location that people are coming from. You can tell where your users are coming from by country, city. You can see the language that their machine is set up to use. You can tell that sort of as it's an additional piece of information to tell you they're definitely coming from that country, really. New versus returning, as I said. If you have demographics enabled, you can get a sense of the age and the gender of the audience, and that's good to kind of see the split, either to corroborate that your audience is who you think they are. So, for example, I would just flick forward. This was a screenshot. Unfortunately, the brands that submitted their analytics, none of them had enabled demographic targeting. I would strongly advise you do to try and collect some of that data. It's really just a click of the button, and it will happen within 24 hours. You'll start to, depending on the amount of traffic you're having coming into your site, because it does sample this information. It doesn't always track this information. Only signed in users of Google, you only get information on those people, which is quite right, really. A lot of users will, prefer to browse privately. But this data was taken from a food website. It's ingredients. It's their main focus is on sort of slimming world, Weight Watchers kind of things. And rightly or wrongly, the vast majority of their users are women between the ages of 25 and 34, and that's exactly their target audience, and it's all behaving in the way they expect. But say their data found that actually there was quite a higher proportion of people in the 55 to 64 market, male 55 to 64. They probably want to make a change to their messaging. They probably want to make sure they were running campaigns that really met that audience's needs a bit better than their messaging at the moment is very targeted on young mums with an interest in weight loss products. So, but that's there. So that information is there to tell you who your audience are and corroborate against who you think they are. There's also an element of the audience targeting called interests. Again, that needs to be enabled, I think, with the examples we have here. Oh no, that's actually here for this example. You can get a sense of the other things, the other interests that your audience may have. This is kind of, some of this information, especially if there's not that much data, can be a bit useless, in as much as, well, pretty much everyone is interested in value shopping these days, or everyone's interested in employment because of the job market, and you have to kind of take this information. It might not always be useful, but regardless, it can help demonstrate just give you a bit more information about who your audience are. I hope everyone's following, because it's difficult not getting much feedback because it's just me presenting. Is everything okay so far? Yeah, all making sense? Great, thank you. So those are some of the things you can do in terms of demographics, geography. So you can see this is quite an important area of the platform. You can see that where your visitors are mostly coming from. So let's just find one with. I think this was the one with the most visits. So what's interesting here, this is the kind, you can kind of start to interrogate this data and just double check that the traffic is coming from the areas you would expect. Because sometimes you'll be getting traffic from countries that are just entirely irrelevant, and you'll wonder why. So in this case, there seems to be a high proportion of users from Pakistan with a high bounce rate, meaning that that visit to the website pretty much immediately clicked off or didn't go on to use another page. The average session duration is lower than a second, and that implies bot traffic. That implies that that's not actually physical human beings hitting the site. So the action you take there is, it's good to see it's good to see the behavior of the actual users, but it's also good for troubleshooting and seeing if your site is being scraped, so being targeted by sort of malicious traffic, or so. But what would have to happen in this case would be, you can usually block that. There is this I might not have admin access, but there is a way to, within here, to say exclude all known bot traffic, and that should tidy up the data there. So it's good for spotting sort of traffic that isn't actually real, but then it's also good for working out where your core audience is. Can you be doing anything more to target them? It's kind of interesting to look at the cities that are most popular. So this example, and it feels that that's probably more likely that a lot of the traffic would coming from Edinburgh and Glasgow. Winchester's a bit of an outlier. That to me looks like bot traffic as well. And this part that says not set, again, if any information within Google Analytics is not set, it means either that it's come from somewhere where the tracking isn't. Let's try and explain this. The tracking isn't in place fully. Often this will also indicate bot traffic as well. So there's two sides of it: working out where your users are and just making sure that your messaging is aligned to them. It might show you that there's a new audience available to you. Sake of argument, you're trading in Edinburgh and Glasgow, but visits from London are on the rise, and you can then drill down into that. Pairing this information with Google Search Console, which will give you information on the search terms that are driving traffic, you can just get much more of a sense of where new opportunities might lie, or where your next audience is going to come from. And it's also just really interesting to see the kind of reach that your site is gaining. So that's the geo side of things. New versus returning. So you can have, you can get a sense of whether your site is mostly visited by new people, which you may want. It might be about building brand awareness, and you might want there to be a higher proportion of new visitors. Most brands will want to be in a growth phase. But then also, you also want to look at the engagement with repeat visitors, and you want to keep people engaged. So it's good to look at that split. It's good to look at the differences in behavior. What do new visitors do when they come to your site? How much do they engage with your content? So in this example, it showed that many of the new visitors, there was a much higher bounce rate, much fewer pages per session by those new visitors, and a lower average session duration. But I suspect now, looking into this data, that figure is driven up by spam traffic, actually. The other thing to note with the new and returning side of things is that it's possible to filter out visits from your own office. Sorry, I didn't have the chat window. There we go. It's possible to filter out visits from your set. It's a bit harder now. Everyone's remote, so you would need to block a number of IPs from where people are working from. But it used to be extremely straightforward, in as much as you block the office IP and the web agency's office IP, etc., to make sure that people working on the website day in, day out weren't skewing your figures and making it seem that you had more traffic than you did. But yeah, in that case, sometimes returning visitors can often be people working on the website who are accessing more pages in one session, who are staying on the website for longer. But at face value, it's handy to see the differences in behavior between new and returning visitors. You can also get a sense of how the audience is behaving differently based on their browser, or on their operating system, or on the screen resolution they're using. This is quite useful for troubleshooting how, say a site isn't rendering correctly on mobile, or the user experience. You will have all come across a mobile website experience where the vast majority of websites these days are built responsive. So they're built so that you have a good user experience on mobile, and you're able to click on things very easily in the same way you would on desktop. But you will still come across websites that don't load correctly on mobile. It's a very frustrating user experience. You need to zoom in and all those kind of things. Well, Google Analytics can tell you about how people are engaging with your website on mobile and how they engage with it on certain browsers. So Safari is very typically, I'll just double check here. Safari is very typically, I mean, it is MacBook, but I'm having a guess here. A lot of Safari users will be mobile. Okay, a high percentage of them were. But the point here is you can get a sense of, are people bouncing more when they use Internet Explorer? In this case, yes, but I do suspect those are bots. Are people struggling to use the website if they are on iOS more than on Windows? So there's the things that you can drill down into when you have enough user data, enough information coming through. And then the other side is desktop versus mobile, maybe a bit more straightforward. It is literally, it splits things down into desktop, mobile, and tablet. The main thing to look at here is, do you expect your users to be browsing your site on desktop or mobile? Certainly these days, there's much more of a shift towards, certainly B2C customers are making most of their purchase decisions on mobile now. B2B is a bit slower on the uptake, but there are plenty of B2B decision makers still browsing suppliers' websites or any kind of websites they need to use for their job on mobile, previously on the commute. And this is kind of interesting, actually. I've not looked into the difference, the desktop versus mobile split since coronavirus hit. That there's probably a completely different user behavior thing going on. But before coronavirus, we had this understanding that mobile would always be on the up and up because people would be making far more business decisions on the commute or between meetings or anything like that. So mobile is extremely important, but you may find that most of your users are engaging with your content on desktop, and that it's more important to optimize the user experience on desktop. So it's there to help you make design decisions more than anything. So I hope that helps. And that's a flavor of what the audience section brings in analytics. So I'll move on to acquisition. So remember, these are the three pillars. So audience tells you about the who, exactly who your audience is. Then when you go on to the three pillars of acquisition, behavior, and conversion, acquisition is telling you where, in terms of marketing channel, where your visitors are coming from. So marketing channel, in the analytics sense, is usually split into, it's never more than 8 channels. There is direct, there is organic search, so anything from SEO, there's paid search, other paid media, so social here, most of social media traffic these days is now paid, unfortunately. You can still get organic social traffic, but it's much harder, it's much more of a pay-to-play space now. Referral traffic, which is traffic from any site that isn't your own and doesn't come under social or a search engine, for example. So this is the overview screen that you see in the acquisition tab. Let's do that live. And it gives you that initial view, tells you the top channels, of which there are more. There are different channel groupings, but that just gives you a flavour. So this is saying that the majority of traffic to this site over the last week has been direct. So that is people either typing in the website address, or accessing a bookmark, or clicking on a link that they've been sent via email or via instant message. That's people going directly to the website. It's possible, because we looked at this before, that a lot of that traffic could be bot traffic, and some of that traffic could be the staff. So direct traffic, yeah, it's handy to know that that's traffic you're receiving, but and also you can track how much. Let me get this right. If you're seeing spikes in direct traffic that are not caused by bot traffic or your team checking the site all the time, it can be an indication that brand marketing is working. So if you're doing some offline marketing and there's no way of tracking that, so an out-of-home campaign, for example, if there's a sudden uptick in direct traffic, you can often attribute that to the other marketing that's going on. But it's not as hard and fast as tracking the performance of organic or social, for example. But in any case, every single visit that goes through your analytics profile has a clear channel attributed to it. So this is the summary. There are two views that will give you a sense of the actual channels that are driving traffic. So here things have only been grouped into 4 channels. You can drill down a bit further with the use of the source medium report. So the source is the actual website that has driven the visit, and the medium it's sort of similar to the channel. It's the kind of traffic that's been generated. So in this case, 324 users have visited the site via Google as a source and organic, so SEO as a medium. 221 that's Twitter, and that's referral traffic, Facebook, etc. So you can see exactly where your traffic is coming from and exactly how your users are interacting once they've come through from that source. I wanted to show you also the referral report. Is quite interesting. It will tell you exactly the website. I mean, it's similar to source, but it will tell you exactly the websites that have a link to you and where the traffic is coming from. And it can tell you about, it can tell you about links you don't necessarily know you have. It can tell you about relationships that you do know about, so places that you do have a partnership with. You can get a sense of how well your listing on that site is performing, or how well that partnership is going. Or it can just give you an idea of other people. Oh, I see that they are featuring us at the moment. I wonder if there's any further joint marketing we could be doing, any way to further the relationship. So it's quite helpful. I'm just going to flick to the chat to see that I haven't missed any pertinent questions about this stuff. Okay, so I'll answer all of these in turn, if that's okay. I'm sorry, I don't have the... Jen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
Is this all going okay?
Yes, you're grand. You're grand.
It's just really hard when there's no
because everybody's quiet.
Yeah. Okay.
You've got quite a few questions in the chat. I'm not sure if these are too niche, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll loop back on some of these because I think yeah, just to make sure I've addressed them whilst it's still relatively fresh. And what I'll do actually, once I've gone through the acquisition, I'll go back to this and answer anything that's come in that time frame. Then I'll do behaviour, loop back, and I'll just make sure I've just sort of run on to the acquisition bit. So yeah, assuming all of that was okay, I'm just going to go through these chat questions. So first question from Danielle, how do you turn on the demographics function? So I may not have the right, I mean, there is a way to just enable. I won't click this because I've only got this for display purposes, but
oh, sorry, this is our site. You're very welcome to enable if you want.
Oh, okay. Sorry, who's that?
No, this is Alice. Hello.
Alice, hello. Sorry.
Yeah, no bother.
All right. Yeah. So I'll just switch that on. There we go. It's literally that simple. And then in 24 hours, this site Engenders has a bit more. It has quite a bit of traffic coming through to it already, so you should already start to see in 24 hours. You start to see that data trickling through. I hope that helps. It is really, if you've got admin access, it should be really straightforward to do that. Next, a question from Rosie. Our website is aimed at under 18s, and we don't seem to get data from that age group. I think that is the case, actually. Yeah, I think that I can't say for certain, but I've never seen any under 18 data from Google platforms, and I can imagine it's a safeguarding thing.
I've come across that problem as well. So yeah, I definitely think there must be some kind of restriction on measuring data from under 18s.
Yeah, that would make total sense. From Siobhan, geography was a really useful metric for a project I worked on last year. 2% of visitors from the USA. That's it. That's an observation. Yeah, so that's it. So this data can show you just basically just help you look into kind of weird things that are going on with your traffic. It shines a light on them rather than giving you the answer. So in Siobhan's example here, there was another brand with the same name as their company, and they were receiving traffic from the USA, absolutely legit traffic, but they were looking for the wrong brand. And it's just, you know, those kind of weird things, there's often an answer for them, and Google Analytics will, again, it sort of just gives you the seed to start exploring a bit deeper. Lauren has asked, how do you set up a website with Google Analytics? What I will do is try and cover that at the end of the session. I'll do that at about 12:15. But in short, there is a way to copy the code from within the admin section. Usually the answer is send that code onto a developer. But if you are the developer, or if you are the only person responsible for the web in your organization, there's step-by-step guides on how to do it. You copy and paste from within the admin section and make sure the code is in the head. But there's much more detailed step-by-step instructions. I mean, this kind of does the job, but if you need more detail, the Google Analytics has a help section. Literally, everything you need to know will be there. Actually, I hope I've answered that, but it's really, really straightforward to do. Norette has asked, how do you filter out staff? So that's done using an IP filter. So again, if I can use the Engender backend to illustrate. So it's done within filters. I don't have the access in quite rightly, so I don't have the access to start playing around with that, but you will do it within all filters. And there's a way to, if you know your IP address, you literally can just put that in there. Or if, say your staff are all on the same, you might be on the same VPN, so you might have all similar IPs. You can use a rule to strip out IPs with a certain, that start in a similar way. Or you can just put in different filters that say block this IP, block this IP, block this IP. But again, very straightforward and done in the admin section. Siobhan has asked, is it possible to cross Drill, yes, it is. So you're asking, can we analyze the data for direct, for example, in isolation? You absolutely can. And there's a few ways of doing that. I'll just illustrate that with an acquisition. So you can either select direct as a channel as through this default channel grouping, and you can start to apply secondary dimensions to the data to look at the other dimensions you want to explore. Or you can, there's two ways. If there's a certain thing you want to look at, page views, for example, you can add a segment, and there's lots of pre-populated segments such as direct traffic here. So this is asking the question, which page views have been driven by direct traffic, and it will filter those things out that way. Or you can do it the other way and look at direct as a channel, and then actually no, because page views is a metric. Two things I didn't set up at the start of the meeting, two very important things. There's two types of data within Google Analytics. They're split into dimensions and metrics. The metrics are the numerical ones, and the dimensions are the category of the kind of data that's there. But you can mix and match these data types within the custom reports. I won't be able to go into that in huge amounts of detail, but you can create custom reports that allow you to pretty much pull out any kind of data that you want on any of the metrics or any of the dimensions that you're interested in. So in answer to your question, Siobhan, you absolutely can look at a specific type of traffic and its behavior. Christina's question about stop the bots. Let's try that here. Christina, your site, yours was WeSeeds, wasn't it? I don't think I can unmute.
She's doing thumbs up. She's doing thumbs up.
All right, great. Yeah. So should be able to do it. It's sort of changed actually. So it's been a while, but there's a definite referral exclusion. No. It's all changed a bit. View maybe. Okay. Yeah. So that's in place on this site. You've done that. So it's within view settings. Google Analytics is always split into three in a hierarchy of account, property, and view. So you can have multiple views looking at the same property, which is usually the website. The account is who owns it. Property is usually the website, and then a view, it can be tailored to whatever the marketer or the developers needs. But in any case, the blocking box is here, and that's already enabled here. Laura's question about privacy policy. There's a warning that's the enable to say you might need to update your. Is this around the information that's collected? Doesn't matter if it's anonymous. I need to find what you're referring to. I need to follow up on that one.
Sorry, it was just the when you went to do the demographics and you click the enable button, there's a bit next to it that says if you click this you might need to update your privacy policy. So it was just
well, that is true. Most privacy policies are built to sort of cover the likelihood that an analytics platform is going to drop cookies on a website usually, but absolutely from a due diligence perspective, it is worth making sure that the privacy policy does cover it. Alice, I'll get to your question at the end about, yes, you can separate out those two domains. You can usually do it. It's usually there already as a host name. So hopefully, if you're using the same analytics code on two different sites, there's so it depends if you are, oh, you're asking those who type it in. No, but in any case, is there at the moment it does seem that everyone's coming into your site via .org.uk. It's very possible that you'll, if I could just, I just sort of just go off this. Sorry, I'm going a bit off piste. Okay, so that redirects. So because of that redirect, it's not really possible to see if they are trying to access the old site. Yeah, so a bit of a niche question. It's kind of possible to do if you're going to use UTM tracking, but I wouldn't recommend it. Cool. Okay, I've caught up on the chat. Let me go back to the slides. I'll circle back to the chat once I've gone through the behaviour section of the slides. So so acquisition will show you exactly which marketing channels are driving traffic. One thing I wanted to point out, which will be useful for anyone if they want to find out more about either how, if you do have paid media budget and you're running Google AdWords campaigns, it's typically very helpful to pair your AdWords account with your analytics account, just so that you can completely understand how it's performing from both sides. I can imagine it might not be relevant Google Ads, but although in the third sector there's the ability to gain Google Ad grants. So if that's something, I digress, but if that's something you're not aware of, please do look into it. It's possible to gain funding to use Google Ads. So yeah, so you can get a bit more information about your Google Ads. Most people running Google Ads platforms do prefer to track the performance of the campaign within AdWords, Google Ads, sorry, but it's not an analytics platform. You can get much more information about how the campaigns are performing through analytics. And the other thing, in fact, Alice, would you mind if I demonstrated this? I don't have access to your Search Console actually, never mind. But the other thing you can use to get more information about actual search terms that people are using to find your website, you will notice if you use Google Analytics regularly that it's hard to see keywords that people are using, because for the last 8 years, pretty much all of this information, I don't even know why this report still exists, to be honest, because so much the data is obscured and everything comes under this banner of not provided, and that's a privacy thing. That's because anyone, it used to be anyone logged into Google, the keyword data wouldn't be passed through, but now it's pretty much 98% of anyone using Google, the keyword data isn't passed through. You just get the odd piece of keyword information which doesn't tell the full story. But Search Console will tell you the next best thing. It will talk about the kind of queries that you are appearing in the search engine results pages for, and it will give you an idea of the number of clicks, which is similar to traffic, the number of clicks that you're receiving on those queries. It can give you a general idea of what keywords people are using to find you, but it doesn't tell you exactly like it would have done pre-2012. So this is really useful if you can share Search Console data with analytics. It opens up much more data that you can analyze. So yeah, I just gave an example here from a marketing agency. It sort of opens up the keyword data. And then what you can do there is you can look into what your, this is more an SEO thing rather than a full digital thing, but you can look at the kind of terms that are driving traffic and you can understand why that's happening. If there are certain keywords you would prefer to be ranking for and competing for, you can have a look at are you using those keywords effectively on your site, and do the whole SEO thing, which I've got follow-up sessions to show people. But yeah, Search Console, absolutely massive quick win within Google Analytics. It's really good to pair both those data sets. So that is a whistle-stop tour of acquisition, but hopefully it gives you a flavour of the kind of data you can get there on where your traffic is coming from. The next section of the site is the behaviour side. The behaviour is more where audience is about who the people are, and acquisition is about where they're coming from. Behaviour is probably obvious, but behaviour is what they do once they get on your site. And there's an element of how they've got on your site in terms of what kind of landing page they've used, but it's mostly how they behave once they're there. So a couple of interesting things from this section I wanted to pull out. There's the behaviour flow report, which basically it shows how users enter your site and then which content they then interact with. So for example, and I'll show a couple of other examples, but it's kind of a busy diagram. I do accept that. But what you can do here is see, this has got landing page selected as a dimension. It's shown that 236 people have come into the website via the home page. They then go on to interact with the blog, 28 of them. Some of them, 27, have gone on to interact with the contact page, 26 with the job page. It's a very busy diagram. I don't tend to use it, but it's kind of, you know, it can help you explore. It's much more visual and kind of helps you explore the flow of a user's journey, but it can also help to get this into tables, which you can export all of that from the site content side of things. You can switch the dimensions in here. So for example, you can look at what the behavior flow is from the direct traffic. So from 958 users, they started on the news and the blog. Oh, hang on. So of 290 direct users. I think this data's off. It's a bit busy. It's very pretty. I can't say much more about this report at the moment. There's too much to say. Moving on. This is a much more sort of binary part of the section I'm used to. This will tell you the pages that are most being interacted with within site content. And you have page views, which is the total number of views of a page, whether it's a landing, whether it's happening in the middle of a user journey, whether it's happening at the end of a user journey. It's literally how many times the page has been viewed. And again, yes, so you can, what we were looking at about can we look at direct traffic, you can also look at it the other way and add a secondary dimension. So we've seen that the home page has been viewed 234 times via visits that have come via organic, 70 times via direct. So you can drill down that way. So that's page views. Landing pages, I use a bit more in the organic side of things with the when analysing SEO, because we want to understand exactly how the website has been found, and the landing page shows you what that first point of contact is. So yeah, very useful. All pages is telling you how much the content is being interacted with. Landing page tells you how it's been found. And then exit pages tell you the last page the user interacted with before they bounced off the website. So it's not surprising in this case that the higher exit percentages come on the blog post, because blog posts often, the user behavior goes, somebody reads a blog post and that's kind of, they're done. with a company blog, you often want to engage your users and get them to stick around, but it's not unusual for somebody to only have the attention span to read a blog post and that's it. That's, you know, it's kind of disposable content. It's not unusual for the bounce rates to be that high. So that tells you about the individual pages that people are interacting with. Site speed is quite interesting. Often developers and digital strategists will use other sites to analyze site speed, but this is the data straight from the source. This is telling you how quickly your site is tending to load for your users. And it can show you these cases of the site loading slower on occasion, so you can speak to your developers about what might have caused that. You can look at your average page load time, and in this example it's 1.53, which is anything more than 3 seconds is known to be quite a poor user experience. So anything under is okay. But in these, you know, there's been cases where sometimes the site has been a bit slower, and that one on the 11th of June, you know, it would be good to look into what caused that. So it's really there just to trace user experience and make sure you're not giving someone a terrible user experience by there being a long load time. These other metrics are a bit more technical and they're not necessarily for the digital marketer to really engage with. Page load time is the main one, but also, yeah, if there's a high server response time, that's a technical query. You know, it might be that your site speed is really slow because you're on cheap hosting, or, you know, a slow server. Again, it's sort of, you want to brief these kind of errors into a developer wherever possible. But if you are fully responsible for all of this stuff, of course, you do need to understand. So site speed is tracked within Google Analytics. It's good to cross-reference that against external tools such as Google Page Speed Insights. But this is good source data to use. I can't really say much about site search on this training session because the examples here don't have a site search capability. It's usually useful for e-commerce websites. So anywhere where there is a search box and people are searching for a product, it's often very helpful to then work into an SEO strategy. People are constantly searching for this thing on my website. That means they're not obviously finding that via the navigation. And then you typically try to build that into the site structure. So it's very useful when the data is there, but I haven't been able to go through that today. The only other thing from behavior that's worth noting is events. So this is about tracking visitor behavior, making sure that people are conducting an action that you want them to, tracking whether they're actually, there was one, okay, yeah, I think a couple of the examples had event tracking in place. Oh no, it's just the Respect Not Fear one. So event tracking, there's 2 ways to implement it. The easiest way is using a tool called Google Tag Manager, which is a session in itself really, but it is possible it's much easier to set up this kind of tracking within that without needing a developer. What essentially happens is you select an element on a website so say you want to track downloads or clicks of a link. Essentially, you either configure that within Google Tag Manager to say when somebody clicks this link, fire this code, and it will then talk to Google Analytics and say this event occurred. Or you speak to a developer and they wrap code around the page element, and again it has the same effect. But what you're trying to do is saying when this thing happens, this natural thing that you're already tracking Google Analytics, so this page view or this link click, please register this as an event. So in this example case, I'm just going to take the the date range a bit further. The things that were being tracked, there's clicks of outbound links. One minute. These, so it's clicks that are going out to the BBC or to these other sites. So that's tracking, I think that's tracking how useful the links are to the people they partnered with. These are far more common. So that's tracking how many clicks of the phone number there have been. But interestingly, I don't think it's not been registering, at least since the 9th of July. But this kind of thing, you know, it's tracking what exactly the conversion you want people to, or the action you want people to carry out on your website. Which leads me on to the conversion side of things. So there's two types of tracking that you can do on your visitors to make sure that they're actually taking the action that you want them to. Event tracking and goal tracking. But event tracking, the mechanics are slightly different. Typically, if you've got event tracking in place, you'll also want to set up a goal. None of the examples submitted had any goal tracking in place, so that's a missed opportunity. But essentially, you want to get a sense of how people are using your website, or actually completing the true action you want them to undertake, which will typically be an inquiry, a phone call, a download of a guide, or interaction with a certain article or something. So I've got an example. It's really straightforward to do this. They take you through a wizard that just says, okay, what sort of thing do you want to track here? Typically, it will be an inquiry. Maybe it's live chat, but they take you through every step, and it's usually extremely straightforward. But you can also, so there's two types of goals. One is a destination, so one is a page view of something. So, for example, it could be a view of a thank you page when somebody is submitting an inquiry, or it could be an event, so a click of a contact form button. What I'm trying to say here is that absolutely any action that anyone takes on your website, you will be able to track via goal tracking or event tracking. It gets a true sense of whether people are converting on your website, essentially. There's a bit more to say on conversions, but most of it is covered. It either comes under goals or it comes under e-commerce, which I didn't think was really relevant for this session. But just suffice to say, if you're selling products online, you can track exactly the sales that have been made, the revenue that's being generated, the average order value, and exactly where those sales are coming from. So from the acquisition report, you can see if more revenue is being generated via organic, direct, paid, or social, for example. But I haven't given full information on that today. I'll go through the chat questions, and then I'll come back to real time, and then that will kind of be my whistle-stop tour of analytics over and done with. So let me loop back to the chat. Oh, that's great. Jen shared the Google Grants information. Noret's question about bounce rate. Yes, so bounce rate is the metric shows, let me get the wording of it right. A bounce is essentially somebody coming onto your website and immediately coming off, so not engaging with any other content within a certain time frame. I need to double check exactly what constitutes a bounce, but it's usually that they have not engaged with another page, and that's why if somebody has found a blog post and it's answered their question, blog posts would typically have a high bounce rate, because if there's no other reason to move on to other content on the website, then typically people will just go about the business. So So the lower the bounce rate, the better, except for if the tracking is incorrect. So sometimes you can artificially lower your bounce rate by serving 2 analytics codes at the same time. So I'd be aware of a suspiciously low bounce rate. Bounce rates that are usually between 30 and 60% are usually right, and that's all good. Ones that are unusually high, so that the stuff that we identified as bot traffic, very likely to be bot traffic, that's suspicious and needs investigating. When it's suspiciously low, let's see if there are any examples. I mean, not really, because these are just one-offs, and you know, the odd person from Armenia got what they wanted on this site. But yeah, I'd be aware of anything that was suspiciously high or suspiciously low. I hope that answers the question. Christina, yes, so you can do event tracking, you can set that up in Tag Manager. I can send these slides on to everyone when we're done, no problem. I can also add, I've got a few resources in here. I can add information on GTM, Google Tag Manager, to the end about where you can find that info. I don't have full training materials on Google Tag Manager, but I can point you in the right direction for sure. Okay. So yeah, lastly, wanted to just touch on the real-time element of Google Analytics, which it has two main functions I've found in my career. One is for sort of troubleshooting and making sure that your tracking is working correctly, that your goal tracking is tracking correctly. For example, I will often use real time to send a test inquiry to show that the event tracking or the goal tracking is working. But also you can use this just to really just have a nose at who's on your site at the moment. Obviously this data isn't, you know, it's the site's not being engaged with at the moment, but you can see that Google Analytics is always on, and there's somebody engaging with the site from Brierley Hill at the moment. May not be the most useful report at this time, but you know, I mean, it's very good to use if you launch an advertising campaign, or if you're launching a social campaign and you know that it's being engaged with. There was a case in my industry a few weeks ago that a couple of guys launched an app about, it's called Never Spoons, and it's there to discourage people from drinking Wetherspoons, and they can go to all their local pubs that have started up again. And they had some outstanding real-time data that, you know, it's just very exciting to see when a campaign is performing extremely well, exactly what it's doing. You can use it to sort of see if the site's gonna need more bandwidth or something. So it's there for troubleshooting, and it's there for, I don't know, for being nosy about how well your campaigns are doing. But it has that functionality as well. No problem, John. Thanks for coming. Alice, you can sort of see how the site was engaged with at particular times using the audience tab. The audience tab is the only one that will break the activity down by hour. All other reports will only do it by day, week, and month. So there are certain things you'll be able to see about a real-time visit, but some of the information might be obscured. So let's see. So say, Google Analytics has got a little bit of it's got about a 2 or 3 hour delay. That's why this data isn't full. But you can kind of isolate, if you know, I'll just try and work out here. There's ways to isolate, so you could apply an organic segment to this, for example, or you can apply a landing page filter to this data and work out how a page was interacted with at a specific hour via this report. It's a bit fiddly, but yeah, most of that data is still retained. It's not as easy to pull it out as I think the method that you're trying to go, yeah, that would make an awful lot of sense if you're able to just go into real time and say, right, that visit, what happened there? Unfortunately, you have to sort of interrogate it from a slightly different angle.
Natalie, I've got a wee question, if that's okay.
No worries.
Is there any kind of limitations to the amount of traffic that can be measured with analytics? So, for example, a website that went super viral, possibly like the Never Spoons campaign that you just mentioned, is there any, so could hypothetically on that real-time overview there be thousands of visits?
Oh, absolutely thousands, yeah. And it doesn't really, I've not known Google Analytics to struggle tracking. But they have a premium version that they strongly advise enterprise clients to use, which I can't remember the cost of now, but I think it's probably 100,000 now a year because they do it as part of a suite. But when they launched it, the main benefit was being able to, there being less sampling of the data and being able to look at, so if you've got a site that's got 1 million visits a day or whatever, Google Analytics Premium gives you the ability to slice and dice that a lot easier than Google Analytics, which would be a lot slower at allowing you to interrogate the data, but it doesn't have a limit, no.
Would be a good problem to have.
Indeed, yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. I'm just thinking, because there were a couple of things that aren't in my slides that I could go over a bit more, that sort of demonstrate that dimension and metrics thing a bit more, or if people have got questions they'd like to ask in person, we can do that.
Feel free to jump in, anyone, if you've got anything you'd like to raise.
I had a question. Hello, it's Alice. Sorry, I've already asked a couple. And again, this might not be in the scope of this training, but sort of the digital marketing is just like a small part of the role of the comm staff at our small charity. And I wondered if there was any guidance or resources for how often we should be like checking in on Google Analytics, and what's the, if we've really got a limited amount of time to spend on it, what's the most useful things to be like? Should we be doing a monthly check-in, or is there any advice on that if we can't sort of do everything?
I don't want to say it depends, but it does, because so some people will be looking in on their analytics data every day. If it's not something you're having to report on every day, you might get away with checking in on it I wouldn't leave it every month, because there can sometimes be things that go wrong with the tracking. There can be, I'd be kind of nervous to just let analytics just sit there for a month, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily need checking every day.
Could I ask you a question?
Of course.
Yeah, sorry. So I work for TFN. I don't know if you know it. It's like a SCVO sort of run news website thing, and we use quite a lot of like Campaign Monitor and a thing called Octopost or OK to Post, which is like an automated social media thing. Now,
yeah.
One of the reasons that I was really one of the questions I've got, and perhaps this is far too big an area to ask in this very, obviously with everyone else being here, I find that acquisition data on Google Analytics to be very poor from those other sites. Oh look, I can see someone else nodding. Very poor from that, and it seems to come as if it's an organic search and stuff. Do you have any perspective on that? Is that something, would we need to add something to our Campaign Monitor or Octopost, OK to Post, or whatever accounts to make those referrals and acquisitions visible in Google Analytics, do you think? Or
yes. So right. I'm not familiar with Octopost. I think Campaign Monitor, I think it's similar to email marketing software in as much as that is okay. Usually when you're running an email marketing campaign, you either need to use something called UTM tagging to mark up the links that are within that email,
Right.
or there's often other types of tagging that platform uses in order to speak to Google Analytics. But it will
Right.
definitely be a tagging thing, and you'll definitely be able to get more information.
Brilliant. So we would have to talk to our developers and ask them to add it at the source, because it's all campaign templates that we use, because we do like email bulletins, all kinds of stuff like that that's set up by our developers. So we would ask them to add the tagging stuff at that end. Would this be right? So that then when I looked at the analytics, it would say where those referrals and acquisitions came from. Does that sound right?
I'd say that the responsibility would probably come on both sides. I'd look into, so the likes of Campaign Monitor will surely have some documentation that say this is how you make more use of this data within analytics, and I presume Octopus will too. They'll just to search for it, there should be some kind of guide, and it may be that that's something the devs need to set up, or it may be something you can set up in the front end. Or it's something you need to I'm struggling to do this in the abstract, but there will definitely be some guidance out there.
Yeah. Great. Okay, that's really, really useful, because that was one of my big things, was that when I look at the acquisition stuff, and it just seems to make no sense. It's as if no one's coming through those channels.
That's true. No, that's one of the common things, and it usually happens with email. If email marketing isn't tagged correctly, you've launched a campaign on a certain day, it looks like there's a huge spike in direct, and you've got no visibility on what the hell that is, but you know that it was an email campaign.
Precisely. That's precisely exactly. You've literally described the situation. That's really useful, Natalie. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No worries. There were a couple of other questions on the chat, I think.
Laura had a question around troubleshooting with tracking on mobile devices. So she just tried going on our website on her phone, but it didn't register in real time.
So usually what that would be, the things I'd try there, if your visits from your IP address, it's possible that they could be filtered out. If you're accessing via your mobile over your Wi-Fi and that IP has been blocked, then that could be a reason. So the next thing I would try would be to go onto your 4G and see if the visit registers via there. When you accessed it from your laptop, it did register. What's your website, Laura?
It's www.sterlingcarers, all one word, .co.uk.
And you've got your analytics open now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's nobody on, so I know if anyone goes on.
Okay, I've just visited via mobile, and that's not worked.
It's not showed up, no.
Okay, and now I'm trying to visit via...
Sorry, this is very specific, but it's just...
It is specific, but no. Sterlingcarers.co.uk. What I will say is that just trying to visit the site without the www dot, it doesn't load.
Okay.
Which is a bit of a usability issue. And now I'm trying to visit via desktop. It's kind of slow to load.
Okay.
So there is a possibility. Is that showing in real time for my desktop visit?
No, it's not showing that either.
So that sounds like the analytics implementation, that there is an error with it, yeah.
Some issue. Okay, I'll look into that. It was just whether there was a troubleshooter that we could figure out fairly quickly.
Yeah. So there is a tool you can get called Tag Assistant, which you can use in Chrome, which can tell you, at the moment, it's telling me there's no Google Analytics in place.
It's definitely picked some stuff up, because under the audience I can see data, but but the real time just doesn't seem to be doing much. So
yeah, so what it's saying from here is that so it's definitely in the code. I can see there's an analytics code in there. But I think so it's been implemented at the bottom of the page, which can mean that it can sometimes not be picked up. The Google Analytics code should be implemented in the head.
Right.
So
okay. So it needs it
that's
moved.
going to be your cause. That's
brilliant.
Why some are registering and some are not.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will. That's really helpful. Cheers.
No worries.
Nice wee bit of problem solving there.
Yeah. George has given some advice on how often to check GA. So I think I've answered all the questions in the chat. I can spend a bit of time going over dimensions and metrics because that is something I haven't gone into huge amounts of detail on, if that helps. So I can demonstrate the kind of the diving into the data a bit further, all the different types of data that because the tabs themselves, the audience acquisition, behavior and conversions, it barely scratches the surface of all of the things that you can look into. There's hundreds of dimensions. It just depends if what I've given you so far is enough to go on to, I don't want to overwhelm people.
I guess even if there's any aspects that Andy wants to go over again, just since we've got a wee bit of time, was there anything that you'd like Natalie to demonstrate again? I think maybe since we've got the time, Natalie, if we do dive into what you were saying there about the drilling down a wee bit more.
Yeah, okay, sure.
That'd be great.
Put my screen back on. So so if we go with, I'll try and show a few things about custom reports, segments, and these dimensions and metrics. So firstly, the first way you can start to drill down further is by applying a secondary dimension. So that's if you want to just get a little bit of extra information about what's going on within a primary dimension. So for example, if you wanted to see how your organic traffic was, I'll take organic as an example. But what's happening with your organic traffic, you can look at, so take the primary dimension of organic, you can then look at what the most popular landing pages are via organic this way. So primary dimension is good for just, primary and secondary dimension is good for just adding another layer to the data source that you're looking at. So this will tell you the most popular organic landing page. You can also find that out from a slightly different angle. You can go and look at the landing pages and you can apply a secondary dimension of medium. So, but it's just a little bit more clumsy because it's going to show you all the different mediums in the secondary dimension. Or you can look at the landing pages and apply a segment. And when you've not got huge amounts of traffic, the segmentation is absolutely fine and will tell you exactly what you need to know. It only gets a bit woolly if you've got more than 50,000 visits that you're trying to analyze. So let's see if we can go back. So you can see here if your data is going to be sampled or not. So the sample means that it's just going to take a kind of illustrative reading of what the data is. It can only, it looks at the first 50,000 or 50,000 within that data set. As soon as it goes yellow, that's not quite right actually, let's make sure. I'm telling the truth. It's gone yellow for some reason, but it is reporting on 100% of sessions. So, some data in this report is unavailable because it's older than your data retention period. Essentially, if you've got a yellow thing, it's not reporting on everything. If it's green, it's reporting on everything, and you just go for it. You can take that data as red. But if it's yellow, there are some issues. So segmentation can be a really quick and easy way of looking at, right, so I've got my landing pages, how many of those visits came through through organic. You can do that via a segment, or you can look at direct traffic. One of the segments I use most frequently is converters. So if you do have goals set up and you are tracking your your inquiry forms, you can look at the landing pages that have driven the most conversions. That's a very, very helpful one to do. And then if you really want to, so this is about sort of like quick interrogations of the data, but if you want to be reporting on something a bit more, in a bit more detail, I'm just going to create this on your account, Alice. I'll get rid of it. I just want to demonstrate the sort of thing you can do. You can start to build yourself a dashboard. I mean, in fact, this is the sort of thing maybe you'd be looking to do. If you don't want to be drilling into the data every day, you can figure out the top line metrics that you want to report on. So let's say organic traffic. And you can add these things in. So blue is metric, green is dimension, just for at a glance things. I do apologize, some of this stuff can't be done in 90 minutes. But what I'm doing here, I'm just trying to create a widget that is going to say, this is what my organic traffic is in this date range. And traffic is sessions. There's two types of traffic metric within analytics. There's users, which is it's usually a smaller number because there are people, the same user having multiple sessions, but sessions is still traffic, really. It's the absolute number of visits there have been. Users is a number of visitors. So here I'm just trying to filter out organic traffic, and then this will add something to a dashboard. And you can pull out all the main things that are at the moment sort of dotted around analytics. You can pull out the things that you're most interested in. You can show them year on year. I'm doing this on the fly. I might not get this entirely right. But no, that's doing it over time. But you can use that. These days, it's much more in vogue to be creating these kind of dashboards within Google Data Studio, which again is a whole other thing. But it marries up with Google Analytics and Google AdWords and Tag Manager, and you can pull all kinds of data in and make lovely marketing dashboards, which can make it easier to do the reporting side of things. There you go. That one's a timeline. All kinds of things you can do. I hope this has given a flavour of the kind of things you can do. I'm just going back to the chat now. Siobhan's question about how do you report on this? So these kind of metrics that I'm adding to the dashboard, it will depend on how your organisation's set up, and it will depend on the kind of reporting you need to do. I can talk about how I use analytics for reporting. I'll typically take this data, put it into an Excel sheet or into Google Data Studio. I don't tend to use the dashboards in analytics, to be honest. And I'll be reporting to my clients what performance is looking like on a year-on-year basis. I'll typically look at things like organic traffic, conversions, the kind of keyword search terms that are driving traffic, and I usually add them to an offline report, to be honest. But a lot of this stuff can be done within analytics. What key figures do you give to colleagues, senior team? Again, it depends on, so whoever you're reporting into, whether it is yourself, your boss, your client, your stakeholders. Typically, you need to work out as an organisation which KPIs really matter to you, but usually the main KPIs are going to be traffic and conversion. So the number of events, providing they are the events that you want people to undertake, and the number of goals. Everything else is kind of is useful to understand how people are engaging with your website, but you can often get bogged down in many people do end up fixating on time on site and bounce rate over other metrics that are often much more important, such as traffic and conversions. Bounce rate and time on site are nice to have, about that sort of trying to get people to stick on your website, but I wouldn't be too concerned about them unless they're drastically wrong. So yeah, usually traffic and session data and year-on-year session data and conversions. And then Siobhan's other question, is this all based on IP address? Oh, so on the difference between user and sessions, yes. So that does mean that often you might have one user who's visiting a site via various machines, and there's somebody who's gone onto the site on desktop and you're using it on their mobile. Unfortunately, there are some ways to do that, but the much more sophisticated user tracking that that isn't built into analytics. There are some ways to trace that that's definitely the user, but it will usually be done within, you know, kind of, it'll be logged in users of a website and that sort of thing. So usually a user is, it's the machine. The machine is the user. So I hope that makes sense. I think that's it for now, really. That's got
just about time.
A few things.
Brilliant. Okay, that was great. Thank you so much. As I mentioned at the top of the session, this is part of a series of workshops. So Natalie's going to be doing a couple more sessions with us around search engine optimization. So definitely check those out. I'm going to be just popping a little link in the chat just now. The session will be recorded. I know that there's a lot of terms in Google Analytics that can take time to get your head around. So we will have that available on the Third Sector Lab site, the Third Sector Lab website shortly. So if you want to play back the session, then you certainly can. We'd be grateful if you could share your feedback with us from today. So I've just popped another link in the chat just now. You're getting lots of thanks in the chat, Natalie. So yeah, if you've got a couple of minutes, seconds it will take you to spare, then if you can jump on that link and to let us know what you thought of the session today, that would be fab. Other than that, unless you've got anything else, Natalie, I think that's us.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Thanks everyone for having me. If you do have any questions, I sort of went off of the slides, but I'll send the slides to Jen, so you get all those. My contact details are on there if you've got any follow-up questions. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone. Have a lovely weekend when it comes. Cheers.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you,
bye.
bye.